Random memory. Thank you. Um, when I was 15 in 1966, we moved from Nashville, Tennessee to Manhattan. I was sent to a prep school, the Loomis School in Windsor Locks, Connecticut. Now, the Loomis Chaffee School. At that time, Chaffee was the girls' school, but it was across town and not boarding. Loomis, however, was boarding. I was the only Southerner. My best friends were Max Friedlander, who secretly my son is named after, according to me, and a friend of my father, who was he was a Jewish man from Ireland. Don't tell anyone that. Don't tell Max. Max Friedlander, the only Jew. I was the only Southerner, and Kenny Washington, the only African-American student. We were the Three Musketeers of Loomis School. Shout out to Max and Kenny. Yo, I had a flag collection. I was 15 from Nashville. See, I had the 48, the 49, the 50, and the Confederate flag. So when I checked into my cell, it was a dorm room, 6 by 12. The bed, the desk, the chair, the closet. I covered the walls and ceilings with my flags, like at home in Nashville. And thank you, Kenny Washington, for, in 1966, coming into my room after we had made friends and saying, "So what's with the flag?" And I explained, "Oh, see, I've got them all." Because where I grew up was the Confederate stronghold in the Battle of Nashville, and the Union took it. It was the first state capital to fall, so it was in the Union for 90% of the Civil War, and slavery was not a thing. And 47 and 40, and in Alaska, and Hawaii, and Kenny patiently explained to me in 1966 what that flag meant to him. Sometimes it's all about POV, isn't it? Whoa, lesson learned. But this was a random memory about Mr. Kirkpatrick. I digress. Mr. Kirkpatrick was my English teacher sophomore year of school at the Loomis School. I was 15. I fancied myself a writer already, having just read Henry David Thoreau, who really needed an editor. I just reread it on Walden Pond. Mr. Kirkpatrick was from Maine. He was small in stature, but he was a force of nature. His hair was a blonde, flat-top crew cut. 1966. His eyes were like bullets coming at your face. His voice was devoid of accent. His face was devoid of facial expression, giving away any sort of emotion or reaction. He simply corrected what you said. But Mr. Kirkpatrick, he would, "Do you understand what Shakespeare has done in this one sentence, Mr. Butler?" "Well, Mr. Kirkpatrick," I was 15. I was from Nashville, Tennessee. The three same guys sniggered. "Mr. Kirkpatrick, I think he's turned everything on its head." "Exactly, Mr. Butler. Now," and he encouraged me. He recommended my short story at the end of my junior year for the school, the year-end, what do you call it, the the school book, the literature, the best literature of that year, basically. And I forget the name, the Loomis Scroll. The Loomis Scroll. My short story was in the Loomis Scroll. Unfortunately, plot twist, I was not there to actually see it on graduation day. Nor was my first girlfriend, Elizabeth. Tad was her nickname, Kenny. Tad, I basically wrote 17-and-a-half-year-old boy's 1966 fantasy of going to his parents' apartment on East 72nd Street in New York, as he had too many times, it turns out, according to the rules, when they weren't there. So my doorman, John, who you can see in Midnight Cowboy, when the woman takes him, John Voight, home from the park, that was my doorman, John, Irishman, great guy. He kept the secret. When I'd go to New York with my buddies and hang out in Greenwich Village in 1966. Google it. So I wrote the fantasy, my short story, of getting to show my girlfriend, my first girlfriend, 17, junior year, New York City, and staying in my parents' apartment like a couple in New York, living the high life. Because I could order anything to the apartment and sign for it. My parents' name. I know. I confessed this to them when I was 28. And my mother knew it. And she said, I was like, how? Because I had not been in films yet, but I would take Polaroids of every room in the house when me and the guys would show up. And so Sunday morning, before we go to Grand Central, we get out the Polaroids, reset every room, just like in the films, and leave. It was perfect. Now I'm 28 years old. I'm confessing this to my parents. And my mother says, I knew. And I said, how? How did you know, Mimi? And she said, Earl Grey tea bag in the sink. The things you keep from your parents. And you think, we don't know. Oh, Lordy. Anyway, Mr. Kirkpatrick recommended me to the, it was a fantasy of me getting to go to New York City with my first girlfriend, and totally untrue, but when it was published in the Loomis School Scroll in 1966, it was a scandal. Unfortunately, I had just been banished from the Loomis School because when I had been campused, which means you can't leave the school grounds, Danny, I had to hitchhike out to my girlfriend's house, 40 miles away, in a Revolutionary War house on the Connecticut River in the country. I took the bus to Hartford, and I hitchhiked out that way. And when I got to our house, there was our brand new headmaster picking up his youngest daughter, who had been at a sleepover with my girlfriend's little sister. And he just said, I'll see you back at campus, Mr. Butler. And I said, yes, sir. And I knew that was the end of my prep school career. He was a brand new headmaster. I was a rule breaker. I was one of the Three Musketeers who had stepped over the line a couple of times by going to Greenwich Village in the 60s. And shout out to Stephen. Yeah. In the contact office, where you had to sign out. Dude, thanks for those weekends. And then Mr. Kirkpatrick, he kept coming to me and gave me the best advice anyone's ever given me. As this story shows, I have yet to learn I'll never forget his voice and his face when he said it. Economy, Mr. Butler. Economy. But he worked with me on that short story to the point where he said, I would submit this to the New Yorker. Oh my gosh. And wow. A dream was born. A manuscript was sent. A rejection letter with the New Yorker was a real treasured item of mine. I'm not sure where it is now.
Thank you very much. Woo-hoo. Go on out and thanks